Welcome to Corner Your Market. Today I have a very special guest, Jason Jenkins. He's a sales expert. He's trained over 10,000 people in sales, sales professionals. He comes from a background as a CMO, so that's kind of where our meeting points are because we're wanting to talk marketing. But in terms of sales, I talk to a lot of business owners, especially in the veterinary dental space, and they're afraid of selling. They feel like sales is something that they don't want to do. Sales is something that they're not comfortable doing. And I know that that's not true because they're really good salespeople when they really put their minds to it. And so I like to talk about sales with our clients, with my clients, because it is an important part of marketing because marketing gets the people there. But once they're there, you're going to have to do your part to get that sale and to get that business through. So we're going to talk to Jason today, and we're going to talk about sales, how to master that craft. And it doesn't have to be sleazy. I think the reason why a lot of us feel really uncomfortable with sales is because we've met a lot of bad salespeople, I think. I think that bad sales experience gives you a bad taste in your mouth about what a bad salesperson is, and so we don't like sales. So Jason has a lot of industry experience. He has spent 25 years in the financial industry. He's an author. He's a 2014 Financial Advisor of the Year, former TEDx speaker. He's built two solid companies, multi-million-dollar companies. So he comes with a lot of really, guerrilla warfare kind of experience. So with that, let's welcome Jason, and we'll get started with talking about how to build your sales and how to be an expert salesperson. Welcome to the latest episode of Corner Your Market. I'm your host, Sailes Kinide. In this podcast, I talk about all things digital marketing, from website design and development to SEO and PPC, as well as paid advertising, email marketing, social media, and anything in between. If you're a small business owner, a marketing manager in a company, or an entrepreneur, this podcast is for you. So tune in every Thursday at 10 a.m. You'll gain some practical insights, new strategies, tactics, and tools that will help you grow your business. To subscribe, go to corneryourmarketpodcast.com and select the podcast app of your choice. Then you can hit subscribe within those apps. That again is corneryourmarketpodcast.com. Also, don't forget to like and share our individual episodes. You can also leave a review in the app once you've listened to one of our episodes. Thanks for being here, Jason.
Oh, thanks so much for having me. I'm really excited.
Yeah. One thing before we get started, I really enjoyed in your background is your experience in Ghana. Can you talk a little bit about what you did there? I'm just fascinated by it.
Thank you for asking. It's really my heart. So I finished up my MBA back in San Diego. I met my professor, Dr. Senyo Ajiboloso, who's actually my friend and mentor to this day.
Oh, wow.
And he's from Ghana, Africa, which is on the west side of Africa. And he is just a prolific writer and thinker. And he wrote this book called The Human Factor in Leadership Effectiveness. And I found it really intriguing. And it was one of those books that I read, and we went to lunch, and it was a lunch dinner meeting. And I said, Senyo, this can't die on a bookshelf. And he's like, well, what do you want to do? I want to build a school someday back in my home.
Okay.
And I'm like, well, why are you not doing it? And he goes, well, I'm nothing but a poor professor. I'm like, well, I'm nothing but a crazy white guy. Let's go figure it out. And so it started with this simple idea. And so we rented a home and put about 15 kids in preschool. And today we have K through 12.
Oh, wow.
In a small fishing village that we're really proud of. So it's called the Human Factor Leadership Academy.
I'm going to have to check that out. I'll drop those notes in the
thank you.
Notes. But I love that human dimension because I know we talk about sales and marketing, but we don't talk about the human dimension and how we're having an impact maybe outside of our careers. So
thank you for asking.
So that's really cool.
Appreciate it.
So tell me, Jason, what are some of the main things that you see with small business owners? What is the hesitation on sales? Because I feel like there's a hesitation on sales, don't you think?
100%. And I love the way that you opened up the show because it is the thing that we all hate, right? Is when we encounter somebody that's, you said sleazy or dishonest, whatever it might be. And really, it's at the heart of what I can't stand. Right. I love seeing great brands thrive, and I love watching bad brands go out of business because they're not doing the right thing. But before we jump into it, I think it's important for your listeners to understand where sales is today. So
Okay.
we have to look at history.
Right.
So we're living in, and we all know and understand this, we're living in such a unique time. And when you think about, since we as humans have been on the planet, we've never had access to more information than we have today.
Yeah.
So when you go back, the very first record of a business transaction is about 7,000 plus years old.
Is it really?
Yeah. The Mesopotamian society
Okay.
was the first to record the first business transaction, which is like on a clay template. It was like,
Okay.
hey, you bought like 2 cows, a chicken, and a bird, and like, here you go. It's like kind of a
Barter
crack up.
system, right?
Yeah, but just like literally from there. And so the reason I go back to that is because the moment every human was on the planet then until now, the principles are the same. And here's what they are. Everyone has a challenge. Like, hey, I'm in a current environment. Like, I'm hungry, need shoes. I need to see the dentist, like whatever the problem is. And they have a desired outcome. Right.
Right.
So I'm here and I want to move here. And so some entrepreneur says, that's a problem. Right. I'm going to solve it.
Yeah.
Right. And so what sits in between those two universes is how somebody feels about the problem. This is important.
Right.
So in order, if I'm in my current and I want to go to my desired, what does the consumer need? They need one thing, and that's information.
Right.
I need to make an informed decision, and the only difference between where I go to lunch and let's say me buying a new home is the degree of a risk associated to that decision. So, because I've studied this and I've practiced it and coached it, there's things that are just really subconscious. Like, me going like to this new lunch place, well, I hope it works out and that risk factor is low versus, man, I got to collect a lot of information. Where I'm going to move, is it going to be close to the kid's school and all of those things.
Yeah.
So when you go back in time in history in getting the information, it was where I'm at. It was then the sales professional that sat in front of the information. So to date myself a little bit, okay, I'm almost 50. So when I got in sales, I
got you beat, man.
Yeah, I have like trifold brochures. You know what I mean? I had like the Thomas Guide before there was Yahoo Maps, just to put it out there for your listeners, right? And but then I was the conduit. This is the takeaway to the information, right? So back in the day, people were limited on how much information they could actually collect. What changed it, what we all know, was the internet, right? So that jumps in front of the professional. So for the last 20 years, what the internet did is it said, I'm going to get in front of that information. But what is the catalyst now is the advancement of AI and other forms of technology. And what that's doing is it's increasing the speed of business.
Right, it is.
So
it really is.
You're like, okay, Jason, it sounds like I'm in trouble. You're only in trouble if you don't do the following. Is that if you don't jump back in front of the information. So how do you do that? You master the art of human connection.
Okay. So kind of taking a pause there a little bit.
Yeah.
We spend a lot of time with our clients talking about how to get that information out there because we do marketing for them, right?
Correct.
So that's my professional experience. We spend a lot of time. We're the ones creating those trifold brochures,
Yes.
and trying to get those Google Maps listing correct so they get there, right? But how does like a business owner that is maybe a professional practice, let's say a law practice or like a dental practice or a veterinary practice or something like that, how do they get that human connection going? Because there's a very limited amount of time that they actually interact with that person face to face.
Yeah, I love to say, would you like to know how to separate yourself from your competition in 90 seconds?
Yeah, let's hear it. Yeah,
that's what we're going to talk about here. So anytime, every person you just mentioned, from an attorney to veterinarian and so on, there's only 2 questions that the prospect wants to know. Who are you and why you? And it's in that order.
Right.
Okay.
Who are you and why you?
Yes. And the who are you is not your resume. The who are you is why do you love what you do? Like, meaning you have to be able to communicate different to stand out. And the way that we go about doing that, and what I love coaching around, is something called your connection story.
Okay.
It's putting it into business context as to, let me share with you how I got to where I'm at. And when unpacking that story in 90 seconds or less, the person feels, and this is important.
So not a resume, but more like kind of like how we talked about your experience in Ghana. That kind of probably shaped you a little bit, right?
100%. You're telling your story. So there's a right way to structure your story in a business context where most people get this wrong. Because when you say, hey, like when you're going over my resume, like, okay, great, there's some credibility to it. But to the listeners, they're like, okay, well, congratulations, Jason, for working hard.
Right.
But I really hope you bring me value on this podcast, correct?
Exactly.
It's the same thing anytime someone is meeting you because they have so many different options. So how do you stop? You stop by telling your connection story where it's just baked in a true, authentic path.
So maybe a story about when you said your story about how you got here, so maybe your passion behind the work that you do.
So the structure that I coach to is there's three worlds to it. There's the past, there's a moment, then there's a mission.
Okay.
And so I might say, my story begins, in 2010 when I started my veterinarian business, and
Right.
I was real excited about it. And I spent, years just really, helping serve the community. But it wasn't until August of 2014.
Right.
When this particular family walked in the door, and in fact, it was just, I'm making something up in real time. It was this elderly woman called Susan. And she lost her husband, and this dog was everything to her. And I was able to help rescue the dog and save the dog.
Yeah.
And I'll never forget the impact that had on, this woman. And when she left, I was like, I always knew when I was in college, I wanted to do this. But then when she left, I knew like, man, this is what I'm supposed to do. So the reason I share with you my story is this is what brings me here. And at Jenkins Veterinarian, this is why we're so passionate about what we do.
See, that's funny you say that, because when I talk to a lot of the business owners I work with, on the side, they'll tell me stories like that. You know what I mean? They'll tell me stories like, oh, we had this great patient, we had this come through, this is what happened. Or this attorney will say, we saved this estate planning situation for this. But when I ask them to maybe put that into words and try to put that into a story or a blog post or some kind of a newsletter, there's a little bit of a hesitancy to do that. I don't know why. I'm still trying to figure that out.
Literally, that's something that have mastered over the last decade and taught, because it is the most powerful tool. That's why I call it your connection story.
Okay.
When you say it the right way and you structure it, there's nothing that can stand in the way, because you've got to remember there's two questions. Is then who are you? And you check that box. And I relate it to trust. So at the end of the day, dentistry, veterinarian, marketing, we make decisions based on trust, correct?
Right. Absolutely.
And trust has two pieces to that. It has connection and it has credibility. Connection is first. Connection is about who is this person. Right. And so when you begin to lay that out and the person begins to connect with you, this is what happens. They begin to like you. And when I begin to like you, I begin to trust you.
Yeah.
Now I'm open to, all right, you seem like you care about people. Now the second question is, now why you? Right?
That's interesting.
And that is the process. And what beautifully distills it down is it gives a roadmap to branding, a roadmap to communication, and then a roadmap to human connection, which that is the right way to go about the sales process.
That's a really, because I think I psychologically do that because I'm a very connecting type person. One of my pet peeves on a website
What's that?
is when I go to a website, I know it's a smaller business. It's not a corporate business. Okay. This might not apply to like a corporate business, like a Best Buy or like like I'm trying to buy a laptop from my father-in-law right now, so it doesn't apply to that. But what it does apply to, like if I'm trying to hire a roofer, if I'm trying to hire, like say, go to a dentist or find an attorney, I want to see a bio on their page. I want to see who they are. I want to see a picture of that person that I'm going to connect with. And I can't tell you how many times I go and I can't find them. I can't, like even like marketing companies and social media companies, like sometimes will partner and they'll tell me, hey, I'd like to do a partnership with you guys. And then I connect with them at a networking meeting and then I go to their website and there's nothing about them. It's just what we do. It's like, dude, people do business with people, right? We're not doing business with humans, with AI just yet. We're doing business with people.
And that at the end of the day, it literally is, that's why if you want to increase your sales, it's mastering the art of human connection.
Right.
And there's tools and resources out there. And everyone's running to the technology and the stuff. And it's nothing but a tool. I say, listen, it's like handing somebody a hammer, right? The hammer is designed to go build things. And so technology is designed to make your business more efficient. But at the end of the day, all roads will lead to a human making some form of a decision.
Yeah.
And so if you commoditize yourself in the way that you talk, in the way that you connect, then I'm like, well, then there's nothing unique.
Yeah.
There's nothing unique about you.
Yeah.
So how do you make yourself, if you're a veterinarian or attorney, one of one? Because of you.
Exactly.
And there's really those three pieces. So you have those two questions, but every business has to go through the process, meaning you make a promise to the world. That promise then leads to a process. So then people want to know then, okay, that's a great proclamation to the world. Well, then you want the brain to simply say, well, then how do you do that?
Right.
Well, that's found in my process. And then the third piece is the solution. That is your products or services. And what typically happens is people kind of get decent with the promise, right? You're a marketing guy. And I'm like, oh, that sounds interesting. I want to learn more. And they jump over process and they jump right to like this bullet point of all their features. I'm like, well, I could have found that on your phone.
Yeah.
I could find that on the computer, right?
Yeah.
And they miss what makes them unique is their process.
So for my audience, like what is your main insight for maybe what makes a great salesperson? Like what makes makes a great, like think of a practice owner or somebody like that. What would make them go that extra mile or do something different that would set them apart?
So great sales professionals, they understand a couple different things. One, and first and foremost, is they understand the power of no.
Power of what?
The power of no. Meaning they know and understand that they can't help everybody.
Right.
And so your yes has no power unless you can say no.
Okay.
Your yes has no power unless I can go through a process to determine, like, can I help you or not? So many, sales professionals or entrepreneurs, like there's a sense of like, oh, I can kind of help everybody. And the reality is, no, you can't.
You can't.
And where there's a sense of that there that loses authenticity. So the first thing is you have to be true and honest to your products and services and the people you serve on this planet.
That's an interesting, I have a personal experience with a dentist on that. When I moved to a new city, I'm not going to give too much of my health issues away, but I have some pretty interesting teeth issues,
Okay.
And because where I grew up, we didn't really go to dentists, and I didn't see a dentist until I was 23. So
Okay.
I have things that needs to be taken care of. So when I moved to a new city, I went to see a dentist, and he looked at everything, and he basically said, I can't help you because this requires very specialized skills. So he said, I'm really sorry, but I can refer you to two people. Check them out. They'll be able to help you because I'm a general practitioner. I only, look at these kinds of cases, and yours is this kind of. So he said a no to me. I had a lot of, I was a little bit upset because now my family was going there and I was the only one left out, but he did say no to me.
That's awesome.
And I thought, and then as I've gotten to know the quality of service he's been providing to my family, this guy's a really genuine guy. I mean, he really cares about what happens to you and your teeth. And the fact that he said no to me was a little bit of a profound experience.
Yeah. So going back to your question, I mean, that's the first thing. But the second thing is that then great salespeople understand the structure and they master the basics. And what is that? Every person that you ever talk to, so everyone that's listening to this, from the dentist to the veterinarian to the attorney that walks in, they have a history to that conversation. So if I'm meeting you for the first time, so they got kids and grandkids and dreams and hopes and all, like they're bringing that into the conversation, correct? But specifically related to the service. So if I'm talking to a veterinarian, I mean, obviously there's their dog, but like there's more to that person, right? So they're bringing that in. Then there's a desired output. As simple as it might be, is like, hey, I just, we're looking for a new veterinarian and we just want to make sure that, Johnny is healthy.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Or in my case, a Duke, right? I got a yellow lab. So that Duke is taking place. And so you understand there's these two worlds. And then the third world is, well, then what do they feel is in between that?
Yeah.
Well, hey, we just moved here. Hey, we feel uncertain. We just don't know. And so great connectors ask questions. And every time I ask a question, I'm depositing those answers in those three worlds. Like, oh, so that's what brings you here. You just moved new to the area. And so tell me, I'm just kind of curious, like, what are your, when you think about a veterinarian, like what's important to you and your wife?
Yeah.
Oh, so they're now telling you what they want, and I'm just kind of curious, like, in the past, like, have you had any challenges with veterinarians? And I'm trying to discover like what they feel is in between those. And I'm like, you know what, based upon that information, I think we're a great fit. This is who we are.
I've run into quite a few situations that kind of brings up. One is one office that I was working with many years ago. They really didn't do a good job communicating. They took away some services because it was not kind of services that they want to do, but they missed the fact that they had maybe 5 or 7% of their patient base really was reliant on that service. You know what I mean? And so when they took that service away, they made a business decision, but they didn't communicate the reasons and the why to this 7%. And all of a sudden, it's blowing up on Google reviews. Like that, it's like it's like we used to go here for this, and now they took that service away. Now I have to drive 25 miles to get this. It's like, wow, that was. I don't know. How would you deal with that kind of situation where you're taking a service away, you know what I mean? And then you have a loyal base and you miss that connection and it becomes public all of a sudden.
Yeah. I mean, I think that someone definitely dropped the ball there because if I was the business owner, I don't know what the service provider was, but I would have picked up the phone and talked to each one of those customers or one of my staff to share with them, like, here's where we're at and the reason why behind it. And at least got in front of that with some kind of solution to communicate that so that they didn't trip into that, because no one wants to be surprised by that.
Right. No, absolutely. So, Jason, who inspires you? Who are there great salespeople that inspire you? I mean,
that great question. I'm more interested in great connectors.
Okay.
So for me, I it's a combination of like marketing and sales kind of coming together. And so I think one of the greatest minds that ever walked was Steve Jobs. I thought he did.
Steve Jobs, yeah.
I thought he did a beautiful job at communicating true value and purpose behind their products and services, and was relentless at effectively distilling it down in a very simple way.
Right.
So if I had to kind of hang my hat on, one, that probably would be the one that I would go to, because, he really took something that was commoditized.
Yeah.
At the time, it wasn't just Apple. I mean, they had hardly any market share.
Yeah. I remember
really
1997.
and really decided to grow a brand that knew their customer base, that was super authentic, and was excellent at communicating its value.
And people are willing to pay premium for that product.
Correct.
It's $1,800 for a new iPhone, and we're not even batting an eye, and we're paying for it. Come on, man!
People are getting in line for it.
Exactly. $1,800. You could buy like 6 PCs for that price. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
So very cool. And then, so for business owners, what kind of resources do you recommend? Like, how do they grow in this skill? I mean, I know you've got some books, but how do they grow in this kind of skill for them? Because a lot of people that are business owners, at least the category that I work with, they tend to be introverted folks. They're practitioners, they love the craft, and they really get absorbed in their craft, right? And so they're not thinking about, how do I need to do, sales and things like that. What are resources that you would recommend that they follow?
So I'm going to be a little biased about it, because I've got some pretty good resources for that, and I'm actually bringing out some more. But I'm going to use a case study, actually that took place here in Salt Lake City.
Okay.
So it's a CPA that came to me, and I mean, he was like as nerdy introvert as you. I just want you to picture that guy, right? You know what I mean? I was like, if there was a profile,
Poindexter.
I was like, dude, you fit it like it is a T. And he's like, Jason, I heard you talk, and I understand I need to do this, and da-da-da-da. And this was about a year ago.
Okay.
And so I said, we're going to start with your connection story, because I need to pull out why you love what you do.
Right.
And then I just need you to kind of focus on this. And so literally he goes, so we got through the coaching, and it was a great story, and it was centered around a client that he helped save $600,000 in taxes. And he goes, Jason, I'm really nervous. He told the story. And so I'll never forget, about a year ago, he's like, Jason, I've said it to 7 prospects, and all 7 have decided to work with me.
Well, because he told that story.
He told the story. And he goes, here's the craziest thing. He goes, when I told the story on the front side, I could physically see them, their shoulders drop, lean in, and I could feel the trust. And so then they were like, here's everything we got. Then all I did is you remember the 3 worlds, where they're at, where they want to go, and how they feel. And he goes, I just asked questions around that, and they thought I was so in tune. He's like, it was the easiest.
Was that something you taught them, or he just?
I taught him.
Oh, you taught him.
These are the things that I taught. And he goes, if somebody would have told me this in college, he's like 45 years old. He goes, who knows where my practice would be?
Right. No kidding.
Right. Because nobody teaches us the fundamentals and the basics, but in a way that I believe is most important is about the human connection.
Yeah.
And so the reason sales it feels the way that we all hate is because people are not approaching it the right way.
Yeah.
And remember, it's who are you, then why you.
Right.
And we just get it completely wrong on that whole process.
Yeah. I had introverted people. I love them, but so I had a tax issue this year, and I had to go back to previous taxes, right?
Okay.
I had switched CPA a few years ago, so I had to go back to a previous CPA, right? Because I couldn't find this particular document. And so I traced it back, and I said, hey, Mr. CPA from 2017 or 18 or whatever year it was, I said, I can't find this document. I know you sent it to me because I wouldn't have been able to finish the taxes without that document, but can you resend it to me, please? Right? And you know what he did? He sent me a $30 invoice.
No.
And he said, after you pay this invoice, I'll get this document for you. I was like, wow, what a miss. What a miss at trying to win back a client that left you for maybe one reason or another.
Sure.
You know what I mean? If a past client of mine reached back out to me for something from a few years ago, I would say, hey, great to hear from you. How have you been? Let me see what I can do to get this for you. You know what I mean? And make that connection, because you never know. Maybe they're not happy with their current provider. You know what I mean? Maybe they're making another change and you want to be there, right? Just because they're a past client doesn't mean they can't come back. You know
That's
what I mean?
right.
You know what I mean?
That's right.
So I feel like some of these professions, they definitely lack that connection. So I think, but they tell each other the stories though. I mean, these CPAs are telling stories to each other on how much money they save such and such person, right?
All the time, right? And so again, when you put it in the context of the prospect just wants to know, are you going to care? Are you going to be there for me?
Exactly.
And so the quickest way and the best way to do that is by telling your connection story that you harvest, where they're like, okay, I feel like I'm meeting the stranger, but like that's what I'm looking for.
Right.
So now the guard is down, and I mean, in most times in most businesses, it's really a challenge of like, can you just put your guard down and tell me what's really going on?
Right.
You know, because like there's been studies that have happened, like we are at an all-time low in trust in this country.
Yeah.
So there's really, I like to say, there's like a trust recession taking place. So when you study interpersonal trust across the board, it's down.
Right.
And we trust technology more than we do humans.
We do. And just to end that story, I never paid that $30 invoice. I actually spent 2 hours going through my archive and I found it. I was like, oh, thank goodness. I was like, I did not want to interact with that dude at all. So. But
again, that's just somebody that's not truly seeing the bigger picture to what kind of brand are they really building? You know,
right.
What are you telling the community? When that takes place.
How about, so I speak at veterinary conferences. And so a couple of years ago, I was speaking at a veterinary conference and I had some kind of letting your guard down kind of moment where I ran into some veterinarians at the break room because the speakers had their own room and things like that. And there were some veterinarians speaking there as well. So I just struck up a conversation with some of them and just to kind of because they're my audience, right? I want to know who they are.
Yeah.
I learned something interesting. You said that, you build that connection. It seems almost like at least that segment, they're too caring. They care so much for that animal. They have a hard time communicating that to the pet owner. You know what I mean? Do you run into situations where people are a little bit too caring or too involved or too emotionally invested? Is that a good thing or a bad thing?
No, I think it's a great thing. I think the biggest challenge, and again, it's why you have a service, it's why I have a service, is like people just don't know how to take that heart, put it in a structure in 90 seconds or less where someone's like blown away. Right. So there's structure to great stories. There's ways to harvest that out to where when somebody tells it so effectively, literally in 90 seconds or less, they're like,
right.
Oh my gosh. Like, okay. I wasn't anticipating that, because their experience of walking into a vet or a financial advisor or a CPA or an attorney, they've all had some level of experience with that. Right.
Right.
And so like, okay, here we go. Fill out too much paperwork and all, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so on. And like, okay, I finally got to the service provider and okay, what brings you in and where's your stuff and versus what if you only took 90 seconds? 90 seconds. Said, hey, before we get started here today, I'd love to share with you what brings me here today and why I love what I do. Is that okay with you?
Okay. Yeah, that's a good strategy.
And then you walk right in, and by the time they're done, they're like, wow, thank you. And so the reason I share with you my story is, as I felt it was important because we're meeting for the first time.
Yeah.
You know who's sitting across from you. Yeah. And it really what brings me here. Yeah. So I want to say thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. You're welcome.
Yeah. And what happens is then the entire mood changes.
Yeah.
And that's how you become one of one.
Yeah. Well, one thing you said about letting your guard down, I'm from Nepal, so South Asia. So when I do business with other South Asian people, you go through the rigmarole of the presentation and everything like that. And then invariably they'll pull you aside and they'll say, you're from the same community. Let's just be honest. So we let our guards down. What they're really asking for is a discount. But still,
I was going to say they're asking you for the brother discount. On
the brother discount, right? Which is fine. I always bake that in anyway, just for those that are listening. Sure. So Jason, it's been a great conversation. Before we close, if somebody wants to work with you, because I think you bring tremendous value to the audience, right? If somebody's been listening and says, you know what, this is really something I want to get involved with. I really feel like I need to work on this connection, who I am, telling my story. Mm-hmm. How do they work with you and what can they expect when they work with you?
Yeah. So, on Instagram. So just Jason M Jenkins _. That's the quickest way to message me and get a hold of me.
And I'll drop that in the show notes.
Thank you
so people have that. Yeah.
I appreciate that. And then secondly is that, so how they work with me is really dependent upon what they typically need. And typically everyone needs their connection story.
Okay.
And it probably takes about 3 sessions.
Okay.
And they have their beautiful connection story. And I tell them, how to say it, how to coach on it. And so that's kind of what they should expect.
So it's a very simple process. Only 3 sessions. I mean,
yeah, 3 sessions. So I kind of give them the homework around, kind of like, hey, there's kind of a guide to it, to where they kind of type out their story, and I have them over Zoom share that story with me.
Okay.
And then I coach in real time. We record that. They go back, refine it. And then it usually takes 2 or 3 times to where we've got it nailed down, and now they've got a beautiful story. And what's great about it, especially if they're clients with yours, is then you can take that story, and the ones that really get good at it is then you record that, put that on your website, you put that out there on social media, and it's not an about me story. Right. I've had clients literally say, "Why I love what I do," titled, and people are like, "Well, what is that?" Boom. And they click on it. So it's a totally different thing, because if I want your resume, I'll go to LinkedIn, I'll go to your website and see your credentials, and that's important. But I need to know who you are.
That's an interesting. I feel like I want to do this with you.
You should. You should. Because the guarantee, and I say that because I've done this for a decade now, is separating yourself from your competition in 90 seconds has one tool. It's your connection story, and that's it.
Right.
Nobody cares about what you've done. They want to know, how are you going to help them?
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah. I mean, that's kind of interesting, because I've been looking for, not to, take up too much time on this, but I've been looking at improving my own sales thing, because I do most of the selling for my company, right? My wife and I do it.
Great.
We have a natural sales personality, but I have a physics degree. I have never been trained. I have never been trained on how to sell. Like, even when you talk about the connection story, I was thinking in my own head for my own business, going, how do I tell my connection story? You know what I mean? I mean, I'm always concerned about how my clients are doing and what they're doing, but I've never really spent the time to take a step back.
Well, we got to help you do it, because again, it's one of those tools that every person needs.
Right.
And when you really distill, and what I do is that I distill sales down in a very simple way. So from the CPA that we talked about, from I've helped a company that has from shoes to, I mean, you name it, like all these different verticals. And what they say is like, Jason, this is so universal, because once you understand that sales is really set up on a basic set of principles and not the cheesy scripts and all that other crap that I simply hate. When you understand the structure, then you can walk it into any vertical and be like, okay, this makes sense. Because I want to repeat myself for a reason, is that sales is change, which is never easy. Right? And that in order to do that, 2 questions: who are you and why you? And it's in that order. And when you unpack it that way, you're like, this is actually a lot of fun. This is a lot easier. And everyone's like, oh my God, Jason, like this is how it works. So again, that's why I love what I do, is because I believe great brands and great companies deserve their stories to get out there, because not everyone is like that, right? You have that in your business, and so do the attorneys and the vets and everyone. And it's like, well, then let's go put them out of business, right?
Right.
So I'm passionate about helping people that care about their customers, that care about what's going on. I'm like, well, then let's go crush it.
Absolutely.
And that's why, that's why my services exist.
Okay. Well, hey, Jason, I'm not going to take too much of your time. I really appreciated learning from you. I felt like this was a great learning experience. I'm definitely going to listen to this again and try to see what I can do to kind of help my own business. But with that, I want to thank you for joining me on this episode, and hopefully our paths cross again, my friend.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me on here. I really appreciate the conversation.
Have a good one.
Thank you.
If you're a small business owner, a marketer in a company, or an entrepreneur, this podcast is for you. You'll become better educated and informed when it comes to digital marketing. And if you implement the strategies, tactics, and tools I discuss in this podcast, your business will grow and prosper. To subscribe, go to corneryourmarketpodcast.com. That again is corneryourmarketpodcast.com. You can also search for Corner Your Market in Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcast, and you can subscribe through those apps. Also, don't forget to like and share our individual episodes. You can also leave a review. Finally, I would love to hear from you, so if you have any questions, feedback, or general comments about the topics I discuss, feel free to send me an email. I will be sure to share and discuss your feedback on the air if it will benefit our listening audience. You can write to me at connect@corneryourmarketpodcast.com. Just put listener comment in the subject line. That email again is connect@corneryourmarketpodcast.com. Thanks for listening. I look forward to being back next week. Until then, be good, and do good.